The Zoro vs Lucci fight conclusion became the most difficult fight to talk about. On one hand, you have people saying he low-diffed Lucci and beat him with no difficulty at all, and on the other hand, you have people saying Lucci took Zoro to a high difficulty fight and made Zoro really struggle. But in this video, I want to give clarification or an emphasis on a greater issue regarding not just this fight, but with Zoro's fights or his IQ in general. I basically am trying to say that Zoro is mentally retarded, if I have to use an in-story explanation. Before we continue any further, guys, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I told you guys to subscribe last video, and hey, we got 100+ new subscribers. You see how that works? Guys, if you're new here, please do me the favor and support. It really does help me out a lot, and I'm gonna pump out more videos. My Zoro is a fraud video where I say Zoro isn't a fraud at all and Oda is just making him stall Lucci. That video seems to be holding up pretty well. Essentially just saying Oda is the reason why Zoro is taking so long, and that Zoro was stalling Lucci just so that the Gorosei could pull up. He was giving Zoro something to do, and that's why that fight was extended. But a lot of people are gonna be like, but you can't just say it's plot. You have to give a reason, an actual explanation. Alright, if we're using in-story explanation without me talking about Oda's tendencies and strictly talking about what makes sense in the story, this is where it gets difficult. The conclusion I came to is that Zoro is just mentally retarded. Like, he might have some of the worst IQ in the series, if that's what you guys want to hear. There's two interpretations of this Lucci battle versus Zoro. The problem is, no matter which side you choose, they both contradict each other unless you come to my conclusion of him being mentally retarded. The first interpretation is that Zoro was holding back the entire time since he was able to quote-unquote low diff and one-shot Lucci. I'll speak on that later, but essentially Zoro started taking the fight seriously at first, but as we seen after a while, he put away one sword to fight Lucci and told him he could end this whenever he wants. So clearly he was holding back by taking a sword away and implied to Lucci by his words that he could end this whenever he wants. And then Zoro ends up locking in and dodging Lucci's quote-unquote strongest attack and takes him down with one named attack that we see on screen. Zoro essentially backed up the fact that he could end this whenever he wants, meaning Zoro wasn't trying his hardest against Lucci and could have cooked him whenever he wanted to. And don't tell me that Zoro taking away one sword was for the sake of him pacing himself and conserving energy. He didn't have that mentality when Enma was cooking him against King, even went as far as to potentially die in order to use King of Hell. And the argument of Zoro using two swords and one sword style attacks on opponents to prove that it doesn't mean he's holding back isn't the same as putting away an entire sword. Zoro occasionally opts to lower sword styles, but from my knowledge, he doesn't permanently remove a sword from battle at moments. Even in the King fight, after getting his sword in his mouth knocked out by King, Zoro made sure to return to 3 swords before he kept on fighting. So saying he has some excuse to switch back to 2 swords to go back and forth with Lucci doesn't make sense. The other interpretation that's opposite to this one is that Lucci is actually putting up a good fight against Zoro, like a high difficulty fight, because of the entire message that was being conveyed to us in the arc, which is needing to end things as soon as possible because the Straw Hats are trying to escape. It is in Zoro's best interest and the crew's best interest for him to finish off Lucci as soon as possible. Jinbei reinforces this, the Buster Call announcement reinforces this, the plan they made prior to this to escape reinforces this as well. Zoro knowing some madness is going on in the island when he feels Saturn's aura reinforces this as well. Sanji reinforces it in the same chapter that Zoro was fighting or finished Lucci. So everything is pointing to Zoro needing to fight and finish Lucci as soon as possible, so it wouldn't make sense that he was holding back. And the man Zoro himself says he needs to hurry and continues to go back and forth with Lucci. So it would be so stupid for Zoro to be holding back after all this, and Zoro's supposed mindset in the current situation, meaning Zoro was really trying his hardest against Lucci. The intent huffing and buffing and wheezing can be considered an argument as well. You see how these two interpretations contradict each other? Because they're essentially both kind of true, like they both make sense. Zoro was technically holding back and implied he was controlling this fight and ended it when he wanted to, but the dialogue of the story tells us that Zoro should be fighting his hardest in this scenario. I was conflicted on which side made the most sense, but they do both make sense. And if they both make sense, they both can't be true. But I come to an understanding that will appease the people who want an in-story explanation. My out-of-story explanation was that Oda was just doing this for plot because he tends to make people do dumb shit that doesn't really make sense to further the plot, or he shows inconsistencies to further the plot, especially with Gear 5. But people don't want to hear it's plot. But like I said, the conclusion I came to then is that Zoro is mentally retarded. It's been brought to my attention that Zoro has a track record of playing around with his food in situations when he shouldn't. With Monet, for example, this dumbass Zoro says my job is to stop you from going after other people, which is true. But like Tashigi said, we don't have all day and you need to escape, which everyone is trying to do on Punk Hazard. And to be fair, this fight doesn't last nearly as long as Lucci's, but it's just his mentality. He knows he needs to escape, but he sits there and watches Tashigi fight with Monet. But when it was his turn, for majority of the altercations, he just defended all her attacks like she said herself, when he could have just low diffed her whenever. But then he locked in and said time's up. He he has to move on forward and cooked her. This is very similar to the Lucci situation, where he should have just locked in and cooked Lucci after he realized he had to move forward, which Sanji gave him that cue. So that's when his trigger switched. But in both situations, he already knew he should have been locked in. So if you guys want an in-story explanation, this guy's actually retarded. I'm not gonna lie to you, like, it is what it is. Same thing with Enies Lobby. This guy here is getting stalemated by Kaku. In the beginning of their fight, he tells Kaku he don't even got time for this shit. So he's self-aware of the stakes. We see some panels of them fighting after, and Zoro then mentions Robin is running out of time, so he's taking the key now, and he decides to lock in. He doesn't quite low diff Kaku with one attack, but he starts actually trying and uses Ashura. Like, Robin was already in danger before this shit, bro. Like, what the fuck? You see my point here, guys? He's aware that this is not time to not be trying your hardest against opponents from the beginning, but he still isn't locked in from the get-go to try to end those fights, which is why I call him mentally retarded. We can only look at it from what's in the story, since Oda probably does this to make fights more interesting instead of Zoro just one-shotting everybody. Like, that's how you make a fight entertaining. You don't just have Zoro coming in, oh, bandana, Ashura, fight's done. You know what I'm saying? Or even with the Lucci situation. The trend I'm seeing here is that we could probably only gauge Zoro's strength level if we talk about how the fight goes after he supposedly locks in. Because with the Kaku situation, he locked in, but he didn't even cook Kaku right away. Kaku was still pressuring Zoro. But in Lucci's case, after Zoro locked in, he got cooked. So everybody wants my opinion on this fight. The strength level between Zoro and Lucci is pretty drastic, to the point where I would say a fully locked in Zoro has the potential of one-shotting Lucci. Like, not even potential, that's what happened. Yes, mentally ill Zoro wasn't locked in, but that version of Zoro struggled to some degree that we can't say it was a low diff. If he wants to play around with Lucci and get worked doing that, that's fine. That just means he had difficulty defeating Lucci with the level he was fighting at. And it would be weird to call this a one-shot if you compare it to other one-shots in the series. But I say all that to say that Zoro versus Lucci can be considered to be a very one-sided fight, either if you want to believe he's mentally retarded and I want to scale him off when he locked in, because that would be considered a low diff, or if you just want to say it's because of the plot he was stalling him, then either way it was a low diff. Basically saying he could low diff Lucci. No matter how you spin it, he could low diff. Whether you think that fight was a low diff or not, he could low diff. On surface level, it looks like Lucci gave Zoro a hard fight, being able to stall him for a while, because that kind of makes the most sense. But guys, I'm not a surface level reader. Like, I can see patterns and trends and correlate it to different moments. I'm even on a different wavelength. I'm telling you, fuck what's in the story. I know what that guy Oda's doing. I know what timing he's on. Fuck One Piece. I know what he's doing. I know why he's writing it like this. I studied the guy. I know his patterns. I'm telling you, this shit is just plot, bro. But if you want an in-story explanation, that's what it is. Like, bro, the guy put away a sword for crying out loud, bro. Whether you want to see that in the story or like you want to say it's plot, like plot wise, that just shows you like Oda does not like take the fight serious. Story wise, to Zoro's character, Zoro's an idiot. Why is he putting a sword away? Like, why is he not trying? Why is he not trying harder? So yeah, guys, make sure you guys take the time to leave a like. Please, no one take this the wrong way. Like, look at my last video. Like, I don't hate Zoro, nothing. That's one of my goats. Probably my second favorite character. So like, if you think I'm a Zoro hater off this video, I just keep it the fucking realist. I'm a realist. Check my previous video if you're gonna start bitching that I'm a Zoro hater. But yeah, peace, guys.